Hi there everyone, my name is David and you are watching the Album Review channel. Here you'll get first listens to new albums or revisiting interesting classic albums. I love rock and progressive rock, but I'm really comfortable with all kinds of music genres. New album reviews will be published at noon UK time on Thursdays, and there'll be a classic album slot at the same time on Sundays. Now, what's on the menu this Sunday lunchtime then? Well, back in the late 60s, there was an English blues rock band that was created that released their first two albums to precisely zero impact. Zilch, nada, zip. The first was released in 1969 and was called Tons of Subs, with a second, self-titled album released later that same year. As I say, the reaction was a great bad zilch, but with their third album, the whole world seemed to have woken up to the band and their music, catapulting them to stardom for just a few years as a band. The album was called Fire and Water, and the band was called Free. Now, this is a review of that album, along with some history up to this point. The blues rock band Free had a relatively short career in influencing the movement, having been formed in London in 1968. Paul Rodgers on vocals, Paul Kossoff on guitars, Andy Fraser on bass and piano, and Simon Kirke on drums and percussion. All came together, beginning their illustrious career at the Nag's Head pub in Battersea on the 19th of April 1968, whilst they were all still teenagers. The first album, Tons of Sobs, was recorded by November of that year and released by Island Records in March 1969. There was a rise in their fortunes by opening up for The Who, no less, on some of their gigs, as well as playing a small theatre-based tour with the legendary Arthur Brown. There was a second self-titled album released later in '69, but despite constant touring and playing live, they had not yet received any notable success in the charts. Tons of Sobs had peaked at 197 on the Billboard 200, and the second one failed to chart anywhere. So it was that Fire and Water was released on the 26th of June 1970 to become that breakthrough album for the band. And an appearance at that year's iconic Isle of Wight festival in August in front of 600 to 700,000 freaking fans, no less. That year's festival featured such an impressive lineup, including artists like Jimi Hendrix, Rory Gallagher, The Doors, The Who, Miles Davis, Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, Jethro Tull, Sly and the Family Stone, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, as well as Free. Good grief, the event left an absolute indelible mark on music history, and it does still remain a testament to the power of live music and communal celebration. And it was just maybe that the association with these musical greats was all that was really needed to get that final nudge to kickstart them to stardom and improve those album sales. Free was a four-piece band that didn't really have a lot of personnel changes over the years. Paul Rodgers, a Canadian English singer-songwriter and musician, was lead vocalist. Later in his career, he joined Queen for a while from 2004 to 2009, and was also voted the 55th best singer in a Rolling Stone poll in 2011. Paul Kossoff was an English guitarist, and he was ranked 51 in a Rolling Stone Greatest Guitarists of All Time poll. He was heavily influenced after seeing Clapton play, and joined early Chicago-style blues bands before forming Free with Rodgers in 1968. Sadly affected by excessive drug use, he passed away in 1976, aged just 26. Andy Fraser was bassist and co-composer for the band. He trained on the piano from the age of 5 until he was 12, where he then switched to guitar lessons. Highly influenced by radio presenter Alexis Corner, he was encouraged to join Free as a stepping stone in his career development path. He was the other main songwriter with Rodgers for the band, and he passed in 2015, aged 62. Simon Kirke grew up in Shropshire, but he moved to London aged 17. He was determined to get a job as a drummer. But after 2 years of effort, he was about to return north when he bumped into Kossoff, and was invited to join the Black Cat Bones, and this was just before Free were formed. Now, the guys started to record Fire and Water between January and June in 1970. They were using the facilities of Island Records and Trident Studios. Now, whilst the band produced most of this record themselves, they did have a little help from some of the others, including a very young Roy Thomas Baker, the session engineer for the recordings. Roy himself later went on to achieve massive success working with Queen, amongst others. It is noted that Roy's contribution to these audio engineering on this album were considered crucial to that finished product. Way to go, Roy. The band had gone along with the self-production route, as they all felt that the production by Chris Blackwell on their previous self-titled album was way too clean. They were looking for a different type of sound this time around. And as such, they were able to achieve a much better shape and sound to this album for this one, as opposed certainly to the previous one. It certainly seemed to pay dividends. Now, the album cover featured a relatively simple design that featured the four members seated, lying on the floor in an assortment of poses for the camera, with the name of the band in a simple font and the album name written in red and blue colours. And this was to signify hot and cold. It was created by Mike Cedar, who the band had used previously and who had also worked with Traffic on their album John Barleycorn Must Die. Richard Polak was appointed the band photographer, and he was responsible for recording many of the images that have formed most of the band's history over the years that we now take for granted. Free albums have always been on the short side. Tons of Sobs was 38 minutes, the self-titled 36 minutes, and now this album, Fire and Water, was also timed at 36 minutes. There were 7 tracks, each of typical radio-friendly 5-minute duration, and any of these really could have been adapted to form a radio edit if required at the drop of a hat. Chief writing responsibilities fell to both Rodgers and Fraser, though the band did compose Mr. Big as a whole. So the album begins with the title track. Fire and Water is a slow, bluesy track, and it's about a tumultuous, passionate and ultimately destructive relationship. Rodgers sings, "Baby, you turn me on, but as quick as a flash, your love is gone." He also sings about constant heartache and pain. "You've got what it takes to make a poor man's heart break, and my heart is breaking too." In fairness, it's pretty standard fare, but Rodgers puts in heart and soul. The band sounds good, and it finishes with a unique fading drum solo, quite different. "Ooh, I Wept" is the second track, and this really feels like a continuation of the opener, with Rodgers again singing about the woes of a broken heart. "Oh, I wept for days, but I don't care anymore. I don't care if my eyes get sore," he sang. The hope was that by leaving the pain behind, his heart will mend. There's a real early Fleetwood Mac feel to the music. The lead of Kossoff at midpoint is further evidence of the Mac influence. Overall, the hope is that the fortunes that Rodgers is singing about will change soon. So disappointingly, the theme of failed relationships continues with Remember, the third track. And I'm beginning to think that you literally can't have too much of a good thing. This was actually an old song that wasn't used when the band recorded Tons of Sobs back in the day, and was originally called Woman by the Sea. We should be happy though that the song is a little more reflective this time around, looking back at the better times without the tears. The music has a slow rock and roll vibe to it, and Kossoff is on the money with a quite exquisite solo. And I also noticed a Fraser piano for the first time on this track, and there's some really good drumming from Simon Kerr. It's a good all-round performance. Now the first side concludes with Heavy Load. This is a track that speaks of struggles and burdens of life. There's a gentle piano opening, and this belies the intense pressure on this track. The repeated use of the title in the lines is a sure sign of this. Rodgers sings, "Oh, I'm carrying a heavy load. Can't go no further down. It's a long road. It's a heavy load. Oh, a heavy load." Now, this track is a real plodder, quite literally. Flip the disc over, I'm on to side 2, and I'm looking for more varied fare this time with 3 further tracks to listen to. Mr. Big begins side 2, and you know what? I'm immediately hooked. There's a big guitar riff, there's a pulsating bass line, and some disciplined drums, and all this before the Rodgers vocals come in. This time, it's about telling somebody to quite simply go and do one and stop interfering in a relationship. There's an element of light-hearted wording into the lyrics, which is long overdue in my opinion, and more than welcome. So in the chorus it says, "So Mr. Big, you'd better watch out when only you hang around me. Oh, for you, I will dig now a great big hole in the ground." From 2.5 minutes, there's a great guitar solo, before an even more expansive bass lead takes centre stage. Man, that sounds so good. It's a great track. Second track on side 2 is "Don't Say You Love Me," and this is a super sad and sorrowful ballad that cuts through to the very souls of someone's emotions. In the musical context of this album, it seems a little bit out of place, but that being said, it's a beautiful song. The Rodgers vocals are just perfect, and the contribution from the others is bang on. The pace, the intonation, the feeling, and the emotions make it just a moving 6 minutes or so. It's all about deceit, false intentions, and the importance of independence, and describes really a situation where someone seeks shelter and companionship under the guise of needing love and friendship. The reality is, though, that they only desired a temporary place to stay, or someone to sympathise with them. That fraser bass and piano are a delight, with, as I say, Rodgers' vocals just perfect. It's another great track. We're cooking on gas now, and boy, we're right into it now with All Right Now. This one is Fraser produced and co-wrote the song All Right Now with Rodgers, and it was a massive #1 hit in over 20 territories, and got recognised by ASCAP in 1990 for garnering over 1 million radio plays in the United States by the late 1989. Apart from being the most instantly recognisable guitar riff, possibly of all time, there is a fine bass lead in the instrumental section as well. It's a track all about strangers taking a chance and the resulting outcome. I love the light-heartedness of the lyrics, and with the overall combination of all these elements, it was easy to see why this was a massive hit. As I said at the start, Fire and Water was the massive breakthrough album for the band after those first 2 albums had met with such a lukewarm response. Debuting on the 11th of July 1970 in the UK, the album eventually reached #2 on the charts, hanging around for 18 weeks in total. Over in America, on the Billboard 200, it first charted late May 1970, and was around for 27 weeks, peaking at number 17. Some success in Norway and Finland, reaching the really mid to high teen position. The track All Right Now itself was a massive success, and that reached number 2 in the UK, number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and in Canada, and top 10 positions throughout Europe and elsewhere. The theme of a broken relationship has always been a popular go-to topic when writing a song, but that opening run of 3 of them on this album made the content perhaps a little bit boring and predictable. It's only really when you flip the LP onto the side 2 that you get a real feel for why this album became such a success for the band. Rodgers' voice is superb throughout though, and easy to see why he was that quintessential rock singer of his time. Credit must also go though to the rest of the band for their contributions, all as equally important in their own way. Now, I enjoy a good rock album, and there were times it was as good as anything out there. So whilst I would score side 1 probably 4 out of 10, I would give side 2 an automatic 10 out of 10. And the album overall was slightly better than average, 8 out of 10. So there you have it, folks. Sunday lunch is over, and we've looked at a classic rock album. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button. That's really important. And hey, if you've got any thoughts or want to request a classic album for me to review, then drop them in the comments below. Until next time, keep on rocking, keep on rolling, and I'll catch you all on the flip side. Peace out.